Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City Hall, to the Little Rock Board of Directors Reconvened Meeting from last Tuesday. I'd like to go ahead, Madam Clerk, and if you would, please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Stodler.
Here. Before we begin the agenda, we have some great recognitions of some more outstanding tennis players. And let me call on our City Director, Lance Hines, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and fellow board members, Bruce and Tom, and Susan. On October 9th, 2018, the Pulaski Academy Bruins won the boys 4A tennis team championship. This is their fourth consecutive tennis team state championship. It's their 15th tennis state championship in the history of the school. 6 members of the team were named to the 2018 Tennis All-State Team: Foster Rogers, Anthony Tran, Sammy Alshami, Tyler Antuaco, Connor Elliott, and Jack Lewis. Jack was also All-State in 2017, while Foster and Tyler were All-State in both 2016 and 2017. The gentlemen are coached by Bill Topic. Matthew Walsh is the president and head of school. Kevin Kelly is athletic director. So, Coach and your team, if y'all could come up here. I've got a plaque to present to you. You can kind of form up behind me here. The plaque says, Mayor Mark Stodler, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate the Pulaski Academy Bruins, 4A boys tennis state champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Dated December 11th, 2018. Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
So, Coach, we've got a couple more, but normally if you want to say a few words, and then we'll have all of your team introduce themselves, and if they're seniors and know where they're going to university, they can tell us that as well.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate the City of Little Rock in acknowledging the students' achievements, and I think it's really a classy thing that the city does in acknowledging all of the teams and such. And city government at its finest, of course. And I want to thank my assistant coach, Todd Dunn, for all the work this season. It was a great undefeated season. Awesome players, good sportsmanship across the board, and hopefully going for a 5th next year. Thank you so much.
I'm Jack Lewis. I'm a sophomore, and I am not going to Fayetteville.
I'm Connor Elliott, and I'm a junior.
I'm Samuel Alshami, and I'm a senior, but I don't know where I'm going to go to college yet.
I'm Anthony Tran, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Foster Rogers, and I'm a junior.
I'm Tyler Antuaco. I'm a senior this year, and I've applied early to Rice. I'm going to hear back from them on Friday, so I'm hoping I get in. Yeah.
We'll take a picture, Coach. You can come right here in the center, I guess.
Okay, well, congratulations to all of you. I'm glad to see that most of you are going to be back next year. So we hope for a repeat performance, and I think maybe we have some parents in the
Oh,
audience. If
Mayor,
you-
we've got a few more to go.
okay. We'll wait on that for the parents.
All right. So the doubles team of Tyler Antuaco and Jack Lewis won the 2018 4A Boys Tennis Doubles State Championship. Along the way to the title, they defeated teams from Valley View, Pocahontas, Farmington, and Mena. The pair captured every set in their title quest during the tournament. So, gentlemen, if you all come up, I've got a plaques for each of you as the doubles team state champions. And these plaques read, Mayor Mark Stodel of the City Board of Directors and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate Tyler Antuaco and Jack Lewis, Pulaski Academy Bruins 4A Boys Tennis Doubles State Champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
All right. In 2016, Foster Rogers made it to the finals as part of a doubles team for Pulaski Academy. Last year, he made it to into the finals and won the boys singles championship. Again this year, he again won the boys singles championship. He defeated players from Prairie Grove, Highland, Magnolia, and Joe T. Robinson. In the tournament, he dropped only 5 games, winning every set. Also, after winning the 4A state championship, Foster was not finished. On October 16th at Burns Park, he won the overall state tennis tournament in singles. It was a rematch of the 4A finals, and he again defeated a player from Joe T. Robinson. Previously, he had beaten players from Riverview and Bentonville West. This is the second year Foster has won the boys overall tennis championship, and the 4th consecutive year a Bruin has won the title. Foster, if you'll come up, I've got a plaque for you. And again, these plaques read, Mayor Mark Stodel of the City Board of Directors and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate Foster Rogers, Pulaski Academy Bruins 4A Boys Tennis Singles State Champion and Boys Tennis Singles Overall State Champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, and responsibility and teamwork. Congratulations, Foster.
Thank you.
Give your buck to others. We'll come around. You're welcome. I know that these accomplishments do not happen without the support of parents, teachers, coaches, and administrators. If we have any of those folks with us today, would you guys please stand and be recognized, all the parents, coaches, and administrators? Thank you all.
Good luck, and let's make sure we win again next year, okay? Great. Thank you. Okay, we can now move on to our agenda items, and if there's no objection, I think we can read items 1 through 6 as grouped items. Is any objection to that, 1 through 6? Director Adcock?
Mr. Moore, on item number 7. 1 through 6. I would like to keep 7 separate.
Yeah, I'm going to read those. I just said 1 through 6.
Okay.
Is there any objection to that? Okay, Madam Clerk, if you would, first reading of the ordinances, please.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 11,366 of March the 4th, 1963, as amended, to provide for levying a franchise fee to be paid by CenterPoint Energy ARCLA, to provide for the payment thereof, and for the purposes. An ordinance to fix and impose the aggregate amount of fees and charges to be paid to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by Energy Corporation, and the method of payment thereof, to amend Section 9 of Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 11,683 of December the 6th, 1965, and for the purposes. An ordinance to fix and impose the amount of fees and charges to be paid to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by all companies that provide interstate or intrastate long-distance telecommunication services and all business incidental to or connected with the conducting of such telephone business in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to amend Section 3 of the Little Rock, Arkansas of Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 15,706 of July 5th, 1989, and for the purposes, an ordinance to levy franchise fees to be paid by all carriers providing local access telephone services, to provide for the payment thereof, and for the purposes, an ordinance to amend Chapter 23, Article 1, Section 23-3 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances of 1988, to provide for the modification of various filing fees and permits, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes, an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 2 of Section 8-31 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances of 1988 to revise permit fee schedules for building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, fire, and related work performed in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. First reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 11,366 as amended to provide for levying a franchise fee to be paid by CenterPoint Energy ARCLA, to provide for the payment thereof, to fix and impose the aggregate amount of fees and charges to be paid to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by Energy Corporation and the method of payment thereof, to amend Section 9 of Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 11,683, an ordinance to fix and impose the amount of fees and charges to be paid to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by all companies that provide interstate or intrastate long-distance telecommunication services and all business related incidental to or connected with the conducting of such telephone business in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to amend Section 3 of the Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 15,706, an ordinance to levy franchise fee to be paid by all carriers providing local access telephone services, to provide for the payment thereof, an ordinance to amend Chapter 23, Article 1, Section 23-3 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances, to provide for the modification of various filing fees and permits, to declare an emergency, an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 2, Section 8-31 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances, to revise permit fee schedules for building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, fire, and related work performed in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
We would suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance 11,366 as amended to provide for the levying of a franchise fee to be paid by CenterPoint Energy ARCLA, to provide for payment thereof. An ordinance to fix and impose the aggregate amount of fees and charges to be paid to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by Energy Corporation and the method of payment thereof. To amend Section 9 of Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 11,683. An ordinance to fix and impose the amount of fees and charges to be paid to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by all companies that provide interstate or intrastate long-distance telecommunication services and all business incidental to or connected with the conducting of such telephone business in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to amend Section 3 of the Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 15,706, an ordinance to levy franchise fees to be paid by all carriers providing local access telephone services, to provide for the payment thereof, an ordinance to amend Chapter 23, Article 1 of Section 23-3 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances, to provide for the modification of various filing fees and permits, to declare an emergency, an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 2, Section 8-31 of the Little Rock Revised Code of Ordinances, to revise permit fee schedules for building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, fire, and related work performed in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Okay, Director Wright, do you have a question on those?
No, I'm sorry. It was on.
Okay, are there any comments, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of these ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause on ordinance number 5, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That emergency clause has passed. And on the emergency clause on ordinance number 6, all in favor of the passage of that emergency clause indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That emergency clause is also passed. Okay, that completes the grouped items. Director, we can now move on to ordinance number 7. And Director Adcock, before we have a first reading, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Moore. Why do we have this on the reconvened meeting and not on a meeting where the public would be notified and they would be able to be here to speak for or against this?
Director Adcock, this is just the first meeting that this is on. Obviously, the board can deal with it on the 18th, but we only have 2 Tuesdays left, so I wanted to find out if there's any outstanding issues or discussion.
I would like for you to explain to the public the wonderful memo that we got from you this week.
Sure, Scott, if you would pull up the.
I was going to say, we have taken some of the board of directors' comments relative to the issue of the non-uniform employees, and have looked to see what we could do in the budget to provide for a bonus schedule, and I believe Bruce is going to show you that in just a minute here.
This is very similar to what we did in the budget in late 2014 for 2015. And again, we wanted to ensure that the employees at the lower salary level received more of a benefit. So this is the range that we used before. If you use $40,000 or below, you get a $500 bonus, 40 to 60, 375, and 60 plus 250. On the next slide, you can see the impact, though, for the general fund. Even the one time is almost $300,000. And then when you include the other funds, it gets up to $464,000. So this has been included in the budget document that's before you. And this would be paid on the second check in January, just as we did in 2015.
I've had several call wanting to know if it would be before Christmas, but it would be the second check in January?
Correct.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like for us to leave this on second reading so that we can have a meeting, public meeting next week, next week, so that the people that would like to come and talk for or against this will have an opportunity to.
Very good. When we get to the readings, we'll see how that goes, but I hear what your thoughts are. Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Wright, do you have questions or comments?
Thank you. Mr. Moore, you had told me, I think you told the board, that you would be having HR conduct a study of the code enforcement salaries next year. When do you anticipate that review would take place, and when would it be finished?
I would suggest by the end of the first quarter.
Okay. All right, because I know they are concerned. They are grateful for the bonus, but they want to have equity.
And I met with the entire group on Friday afternoon, this past Friday, to kind of go over where we are from an organizational standpoint. They do have a very tough job, and I'm very pleased that all the vacancies have been filled, and we'll just see where we come out with the study.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Director Adcock, go ahead, please.
Mr. Moore, I'd like for you to add on to that the code, the kennel techs at the Animal Village also in that study. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead with first reading, please.
An ordinance to provide for and to adopt the 2019 budget for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas for the period beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019, to appropriate the resources and uses for every expenditure item and fund, to declare an emergency and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. There's one nay. But the ayes have it. So second reading, please.
An ordinance to provide for and to adopt the 2019 budget for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas for the period beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019, to appropriate resources and uses for every expenditure item and fund, to declare an emergency, second reading.
Okay, is there a motion for third reading? Hearing none, then this will be left on the agenda for next Tuesday for third and final reading. All right, very good. We can now move on to ordinance number 8. Mr. Carpenter, since this deals with retirement benefits for the mayor, I would assume I'm recused from this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Mayor Webb. And I know Mr. Moore and you, and I believe Mr. Carrera are out in the audience to try and address whatever questions there may be.
Director Adcock? Mr. Moore or Mr. Carpenter, we just received this information. In fact, part of the information we haven't even received until we came in here this afternoon. Could you tell me why we're looking at an issue this important at a reconvened meeting and being asked to vote on it before we even have a time to look at and before the public hears about it and before anyone can have any input into it?
Director Adcock, the question, first off, in 2007, the question of providing a retirement benefit for the mayor in Little Rock was decided by the voters. And at that time, a retirement plan was set up privately for Mayor Stodola. In 2014, the board adopted a defined benefit plan for all city employees. In the last several months, there have been discussions with finance and human resources in the manager's office and Jody Carrero, who is the consultant for the defined benefit plan. And the decision was made that it would be to the benefit of the city if mayor retirement plans were administered through the defined benefit plan. The ordinance was being drafted, and it made sense to me to go ahead and make it not just Mayor Stodola, but all mayors in the future that would be entitled to a retirement plan. There were some questions about a couple of provisions that really didn't get worked out until yesterday. The materials that was passed out a few minutes ago by me had been sent earlier today by email, but not a whole lot earlier today. And part of the reason for that is I was trying to call all of the board members and discuss with them the background on this issue. As to why it's on the budget today, I don't know.
We have had many, many meetings since 2014 and many more meetings since 2007. And so I can't understand why all of a sudden this has come up before us at a reconvened meeting.
I think part of the problem is that there is a statute that applies to Mayor Stodola and applies to anybody who is at least 60 years old and has 10 years of service as the mayor that mandates that that person receive a half-salary retirement. In looking at the program that was set up for the mayor in 2007, there were not sufficient monies in that to make that payment. So part of what was going on is that the city was going to end up having to make a differential payment. Now, Mr. Carrera is here and he can tell you actual numbers, but just to give an illustration, if the plan that Mayor Stodola has would provide him $39,000 a year, then the city would have to come up with $41,000 a year from the general fund for the budget. And I think that's one of the things that led to using the defined benefit plan as a means to administer this. I know that we've been looking at that aspect of it over the last few months, but I also know that as late as Friday afternoon to Monday morning, we had one more tax issue that had to be worked out to make sure that what was being offered would not somehow create an adverse impact on the employees.
Who can tell us the cost of this to not only now with Mayor Stodola, but in the future for future boards to look at?
Not me, probably Mr. Carrera.
Okay, then I'll keep the rest of my questions for Mr. Carrera.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Richardson. Director, will you press your button again?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Director Adcock's comments about Mr. Carrera is a segue to my question to Bruce or Tom. I know Jody does wonderful work, and he's doing consulting work for us, but does he have a time-restricted contract with us, or is this ongoing work as if he's part of our staff? I mean, how's this set up? What are the parameters of his work with us?
And maybe Ms. Witherall can explain the relationship. He's definitely not a staff member.
Oh, I understand that, but he's our consultant.
He's a consultant. So
and he's made some recommendations back in 2014, I think. and now we're in 2018. So maybe Jody, you can explain that to us.
Correct. We did hire him in that point to help develop. And again, at that point in 2013, when we started looking at this, there was not a idea of which type of retirement we were going to go to. We didn't try to direct them in either way, but this was a lot of good work, reviewing the numbers, and there's some, as you all know, because you voted on it, there's some very strict parameters that are included in our current plan that would really secure it in the future going forward. So, Stacy, do you want to discuss the?
Well, and back to your point you just made, Bruce. So, are these recommendations based on this plan we're talking about? We're going to be talking about some point in time. Are these based on the work that Mr. Carrero done for us? He had done for us in 2014.
No, this was very specific to look at how to deal with Mayor Stodola, because as Tom said, there's a state statute out there that the mayor meets the requirements of, and so once that was determined, then what's the best in the best interest of the city in order to protect the assets going forward and the obligation that is due or will be due.
So it's item-specific contract?
Correct.
Rather than time-restricted contract?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Stacey, is that, you want to add anything? No. Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance, first reading?
An ordinance to establish parameters for the retirement benefits for the mayor of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide spousal benefits for the widow of a Little Rock mayor, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, first reading.
There's a motion to suspend the rules and place on second reading. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Roll call, please.
I have a quick question. With the mayor being out of the room and I'm in the chair, can I vote or I can vote? Okay, thank you.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson.
No.
Director Peck. No. Director Hines. Yes. Director Wright. Yes. Director Wyrick. No. Director Compuris. Director Fortson.
Aye.
Director Adcock.
No.
Vice Mayor Webb.
No.
It's 5-4.
It fails.
Okay.
It failed. They can't go to second reading.
Tom, can you?
The motion to go to second reading has failed, so you'll need to wait until the 18th.
Okay, thank you. Does somebody want to grab the mayor so we can?
I've got my light on the same subject.
Okay, sorry, Director Adcock.
Yes, I want to hear from Mr. Carrero. I want to hear about the cost of this. Mr. Moore, while he's coming, Mr. Carpenter, the $173,000 that we read in the newspaper that the mayor was going to leave the city with, is that what this is about, or is that something separate?
It's totally separate.
And how is it separate?
Well, the first question's got to be what the mayor's benefit is going to be in terms of any unused vacation, and the board's going to have to decide that. And the second issue is it has nothing to do with the retirement plan.
Since the mayor will be leaving in 2 weeks, when do you plan on having that discussion with us?
I really don't. I think that's a discussion for the board of directors, and
But since Mr. Mayor is the head of the board of directors and he can't discuss the subject, who's going to discuss it? Director Webb is going to discuss it with us?
it's an issue for the board of directors to decide.
Okay.
I have another question. So we're going to hear from Mr. Carrero tonight, but because we didn't advance it to a second reading, we're not going to hear from anybody else. Is that correct?
Vice Mayor, that's what I would do. I mean, there's a technical rule that if you don't go to the second reading, then the matter is put off till the next meeting. Mr. Carrera was asked to come here today to answer questions, and since the mayor's already down from the podium, it makes sense to hear the questions about cost from him, because there are not going to be questions about what should you do.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that so folks who are watching and people who turned in a card would understand why they're not going to be able to participate, but Mr. Carrero is going to answer questions.
Yes, ma'am.
And before we hear from him, Director Hines.
I'll wait till Mr. Carrero's done.
Okay, and Director Adcock, I assumed that you were finished. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Carrero.
Okay, let me first say, I'm Jody Carrero. I think I've met I know of all of you, but I'm the actuary I work for the pension trust that provides the retirement, the big plan that provides retirement for all your non-uniform employees. As part of that, there's just general consulting having to do with benefit plans that I'm asked to do from time to time, and in this case, that was the situation here that we knew this was an issue, and your retirement trustees have talked about this in their last two meetings and trying to develop a way to handle this. Just brief background. There is a section of code that deals with mayors separately that has a lot of different ways that mayors can get a retirement that is basically 50% of pay if they meet those requirements for their lifetime. There is also another section of code that says that if a city provides a retirement plan, then the person would choose the elected official that is eligible for these other benefits in this chapter, would have to choose which one that they would receive. When I talk about the numbers in just a moment, the value of the mayor's balance right now is less than the value of what the 50% of pay benefit that's in the state statute is. So we were assuming as we moved through the last few months that he would choose the more valuable benefit, and so we were trying to find the most efficient way to administer that for that retirement committee to administer that, but also financially the best way to administer that, and that goes into a lot of financial stuff that is real exciting. All the GASB rules and all of those things, which I won't go into all of that, except to say that as part of the bigger plan, we can value that we have to value a benefit either way, but we can value that benefit for less money, less cost to the city. And as I'm sure Ms. Linehan's explained to you before, those net pension liabilities that arise from pension plans end up on the city's balance sheet. So it is a big deal to keep net pension liability down as much as possible. So that's where we got to this and got to my suggestion, and my suggestion was that it would be handled as part of well, we call it Defined Benefit 14 since it was adopted in 2014. We call it DB 14. So if I say that, that's the shorthand there. So my suggestion was that you look at doing that. We had to jump some legal hurdles to be able to do that, but once that was done, it was the most efficient for the city and would provide the right benefits for the mayor according to state law. So I know, and let me just try to answer what I know are some of the questions before they're asked, is what is that going to add to the city's cost? Well, actually, that's kind of a two-part question. One is, what's it going to add to our liabilities as of January 1? And also, what is that going to cost going forward to be able to do that? And I had presented a lot of those things in a letter to the city manager that they had when they came up with the final parameters of the ordinance that they've presented to you. But in brief, here are some of the key numbers. The total liability for the mayor to be under DB 14 with the COLA, and I'll talk more about that in a second, with the COLA that's in the pension plan for all other employees, is $890,000. Now, if he chooses to do that, which you would expect him to, then the net value, we would keep the employer money that was accumulated under the money purchase plan that the city has for the mayor and certain other individuals, and that money would stay with the city. It would go to DB 14, and then a net amount, and that net amount is, my estimate's $490,000, would be the net pension liability that would increase on the city's books at that time. The board, as noted in the ordinance, the board has certain other choices that they can make. The ordinance proposes using the cost of living increase that I mentioned. The law says that the board can choose anywhere from 0 to 3%. The COLA that's in there for all other employees that's in the plan, if you remember, is 2/3 of the increase in the CPI during the preceding 12 months. So the COLA that is in the plan for all other employees is not 3%, is something right now is less than that and projected to be less than that over the next period of time. But it also can be more. That wording that's in the plan is that it's 2/3 of the CPI, but in any one year cannot increase more than 5%. Now, we don't foresee, cost of living going to 7.5% anytime real soon, but if it did, you could have a one-year COLA as much as 5%. So the proposal you have there includes the same CPI benefit increase that's in DB 14 for all employees. The statute allows you to choose anywhere between 0 and 3%. The statute also allows for the board to add a benefit for the surviving spouse under certain conditions of a mayor that is no longer with the city. And what the proposal you have before you says is that that benefit is available, but not at no cost to the mayor. If the mayor chooses to do that, he can choose that, or he can choose one of the other options that's in DB 14 in the same way that other employees can. So if I'm employed here for a period of time and I retire, my benefit is, pick a number, $2,000 a month, and from the retirement plan. I can choose several options that would cover my spouse. Joint and 50%, is a popular one. But my benefit may only be 90% of that $2,000, or in that example, $1,800 a month to have that spouse coverage. So the ordinance you have before you says that the mayor can have any of the spouse coverages beyond just what's in the law, but any of the ones that are involved in DB 14, except he would have to take that reduced benefit to pay, so to speak, pay for that spouse coverage. So if you chose to do otherwise, I have the numbers here, the value of doing that without a reduced benefit is $140,000 above the numbers I mentioned a moment ago. So that's kind of the value of what happens if you choose to go this route. The cost would be something that would have to be developed, and one suggestion is that difference in liability should be paid off over 10 years or less, just for example. And if you did that, and what I reported in my letter is that if that was done, it would be about $60,000 a year the city would need to contribute to DB14 in addition to the regular contributions to fund the plan and do that. All of this assumes that the retirement committee will bring back a amendment to DB14 to put those things into the plan, but this would be the plan that would go forward in this case. So I'll stop and just answer questions at this point.
Director Adcock, will you press your button again?
Okay, so what the city's going to pay is $60,000 a year for how many years?
That's a 10-year payoff.
That's a 10-year payoff. Okay, and what type of retirement is the mayor going to get?
That would be half of salary, and the salary is public information. It's $160,000. Half of that would be $80,000 per year. So what he would receive would be $80,000 per year.
Okay, he's going to receive $80,000 per year. And his spouse, is that going to be decided by what plan he chooses?
Under the ordinance you have in front of you, it would depend on what he chooses of the options that are within the plan.
Would
Yes,
any
ma'am.
of those options be additional cost to the city?
Under the ordinance you have there, I know I'm being overly careful here, but under the ordinance that you have before you, that would not be in addition to the cost that's here.
Okay, and on the COLA?
The number that I gave you, the 490,000 and that 60,000 that you just mentioned, we're using the COLA that's built into DB14. Not a 3% COLA, but the COLA that's built into the current retirement plan.
Okay.
This
And
last year, I believe it was 1.5%.
1.5%? Okay, that's all my questions right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Compuros?
Jody, I've got a real simple question for you. Is there anything that you've talked about? I agree with, I was going to hope we get a second reading so all the people wouldn't have to come back next week, but they've now gone. But is there anything in this other than just stamping it that's not part of our retirement fund and state statute? Is there any discretionary part of this that we're making a decision on? Are we just rubber stamping what is part of what you brought to us in 2014 and what the state law says for?
With that modifier, yes, sir. It is all within the boundaries of the current plan document, except that the benefit amount is what the state statute says.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, basically what we're being asked to do is what we're often being asked to do is just okay what the rules of the game are that we have no control over. Is that too simple a question, or am I being too simplistic in my thought process?
Yes, sir. For the most part, I completely agree with that statement. I will modify a little bit, as actuaries tend to do. I know, I'm sorry, but you do have a choice as to, because part of the ordinance is to handle it through the plan. You do have a choice just to handle it completely separate and pay out $80,000 a year until it's gone, and then pay it out of general fund every year. What one choice that you would be making with this, that is your choice, is to administer this benefit through the existing plan.
Well, why would we not want to do that?
Well, that's why I suggested it. I think that's the
the
best way to do it.
It shows up as a liability every year, right? If we don't do it that way.
That's correct. It'll be in the liability for the big plan, but
it'll be the liability for the plan, not for the liability for the city.
Well, yes, sir, but the liability for the plan is
the
net
liability
pension
of the city.
is the liability of the city. Yes, sir.
Are you finished?
Yeah,
Director Fortson, will you press your button again?
Jody, did I understand correctly that the addition of the spousal benefit comes at a cost to the recipient?
Under the ordinance you have before you, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that point.
Director Hines?
Jody, I'm trying not to confuse
Mayor,
everybody.
Vice Mayor, could I, just to follow up on Mr. Fortson, Director Fortune's question, that is a policy issue still for the board. You can either make it at the expense of the mayor, you can make it at the expense of the plan. And while Mr. Carrera is here, you may want to ask about that difference.
Thank you.
So Jody,
Well,
so
I thought, I heard Mr. Carrera, his recommendation was it came at a reduction in the benefit received by the recipient. Was that what you said, Jody?
Yes, sir. I mean, this board can do differently than that, but what's in the ordinance you have before you, it would come at the expense, reduction in benefit. Yes, sir.
all right. So we've talked about this ordinance and this plan, and that there is a net liability that goes on the books. If we do it totally separate, is that net liability greater than, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
I know we've got a net outlay that's more every year out of the general fund.
Yeah, there's several factors that would go into that, but I did estimate in my report to administration that, and that cost would be 120 to 170,000, depending on what COLA and all of those things. It would be, so 120 to 170,000 more liability would be on the city's books if we did not do it in this fashion.
Okay,
if we did it as a standalone.
If we did it as a standalone, we have more exposure.
We would have more exposure, more
Okay.
net pension liability.
So in your professional opinion, the way to go is to use this ordinance, put it under the plan we've had, so the mayor would be treated just like every other city employee we have. It wouldn't be, so it would basically align all of our retirement plans with what we moved the city, which I think we've now closed out the old fireman's pension fund and the police fund into the state lot fee. So we have basically, if we take care of the mayor and the mayors going forward, we only have to deal with one pension plan fund and not.
Well, there is an old defined benefit that just has like 3 actives and some retirees in it.
Okay.
But yeah, we
But
will.
we pretty much.
We have.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Director Wyrick?
So my question is, you said that he was entitled to half of his salary, which would be 80,000, and then you went to talk about a number that was 60,000. Would that be him paying for the spouse retirement?
No, ma'am. That would be a suggested way for the city to reimburse DB 14 for the remainder of that value.
Okay.
That could be done different ways, but just using a 10-year payoff, that would be the way that would be done.
Okay, and you started out saying the liability January 1 was 890,000, and then you dropped to 490,000. And is it because there's 400,000 in the private benefit plan that he has now?
Approximately as of June 30th.
Okay, so I think that's important to bring out to the public so they know how we got to 490,000. The
Yes,
other
ma'am.
question I have is if this ordinance is passed, I kind of got the idea that the retirement trustees actually have to approve this or work this issue. What was your comment in regards to that?
What the retirement trustees would need to do is to, at some point in the near future, bring back an amendment to the plan document.
Okay.
That would include whatever language out of this ordinance into the plan document. So we would basically just to implement.
Just implement it. Okay.
Implement this ordinance.
Okay.
These are your decisions, and then they would implement
They
your
have
decisions.
to implement what we decide with this
Yes, ma'am.
ordinance. Okay. And who are our retirement trustees?
Ms. Linehan and Ms. Witherell are here. And then Scott Massinelli from Finance is and Shawanda Robinson in Parks and
So they're all internal
Roosevelt.
employees
they're
with
all
the city?
internal, yeah.
Okay. I
Roosevelt
wasn't clear
Lewis,
on that.
yeah,
Okay.
is the
All right.
last.
That's what I need to
5,
know.
yeah.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Did you turn yours off?
Yeah, I think I got my question answered. I'm just a little fuzzy on one point, but.
Okay.
Am I on?
Well, you were, and then you.
Yeah, you can go to the next.
Okay.
I'll marinate on what I've heard and see if
Okay, Director Fortson.
that clarifies it.
My question was answered earlier, so.
Director Hines.
Well, okay, there we go. Jody or Bruce, so the roughly 70,000 that the mayor will take with him, that is his own personal money that he has put into the plan over the last 12 years, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that is why he takes that with him and it doesn't go into lot fee.
Doesn't go into DB14.
DB14, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. That is not a clear, solid legal issue, but that is the policy issue that administration decided, and I think it's Section 5 of the ordinance that you have.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Jody, Bruce, or Tom, how much will the mayor take from unused vacation time? And then secondly, what was the impetus for this at this point in time, and who helped craft this ordinance?
In terms of the unused vacation, that's going to be a issue the board's going to have to address. In terms of the ordinance, after everybody said this is where we're headed, I drafted the ordinance and then circulated it internally and got some suggestions on language and put them into it.
So that's what we got today at roughly about 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wright.
Mr. Carpenter, don't we have to have this in place by the end of the year when the mayor is no longer serving?
The have to is the part that caused me a problem. Starting January the 1st, the mayor gets an $80,000 a year retirement. You have to make that. How you do it is up to you. But on the first of the year, we're also going to have a retirement benefit that's comparable to that of the city manager for Mayor Scott. So this ordinance is designed to do both of those things.
Okay, thank you.
Are there additional questions for Mr. Carrero? Director Adcock?
Okay, we've talked about 173,000. Now we're talking about 170,000. Are they the same?
I don't know anything about 173,000.
Okay.
I know that there was an amount at June 30 that was the mayor's personal money that he contributed that was 178,000. I know those numbers are similar, but I don't. If there's 173,000, that's not my issue.
Then, Mr. Moore, my question is for you. That's $343,000. Does this 170 plus 173 is 343, right?
I'm not sure. The
Check that you're going to have to write out of our general fund.
the pension liability that is required will be just coming out of our pension fund that is set up. And then, as Thomas said, the board will have to deal with the issue regarding the unused vacation.
So the 173 or 78, whichever it is, comes out of the pension fund.
The 178 was the value at June 30. Right. That would come out of not DB14, but out of the mayor and director's pension fund.
That money would not be eligible to pay down this 490,000?
Director Adcock, that was let me try it this way. There's a couple of people in this world I don't mess around with, and one of them is the IRS. And what was looked at is what is the best way that we can make this least expensive for the city because of the statutory mandate that there's a half-salary retirement, and not jeopardize the tax implications of our own retirement plan. And Mr. Carrera and the attorney that he's been working with came to the conclusion that by letting the mayor have the monies that he has paid into the plan that was set up in 2007 is the safest way to do that.
Safest for who?
Safest for the city employees' pension plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore, were you going to make a comment?
And it's been said before, after getting the information from Jody, then, I started examining, okay, long term, what is in the best interest of the city? Because as Jody has said, we could set up a separate plan for him, and he'd be the only one in it until the next mayor retired. But in looking at all our options, and again, even on the COLA deal, I said it should apply to him like it does to other employees, even though this board can do an automatic 3% every year. But I thought it was important and then any additional benefit, spousal benefit, he's going to be required to handle. In talking, working with Jody and Tom and Sarah and Stacy, we felt like this option, instead of setting up a standalone plan, would be the best interest. It would be in the best interest of the city.
Mr. Moore, on the insurance, health insurance, vision, and all the others, do all retired people get to keep their insurance? I know that the police do, but do...
Yeah, let me ask Mr. Witherall to come forward and talk about those other benefits.
Vice Mayor Webb, Director Adcock. The retiree insurance is available for all regular full-time employees if they meet the rule of 70. And that has to be the years of service that they have with the city of Little Rock must equal 70 in order to just be eligible. Additionally, employees can only keep the health insurance if they've not reached Medicare eligibility age. In this instance, the mayor is already over age 65, so he will not be eligible to continue on the city's health insurance.
Okay, and all other health benefits?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Director Richardson?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Bruce, I think Bruce really answered my question, but I'll make sure I have some clarity on this. So the spousal benefits will be the sole responsibility of the mayor? Just want to make sure I cleared on that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that.
You can chime in, Tom.
Richardson, that is a policy question for the board. What is before you would make the responsibility of the mayor. If the board wished to have the city be responsible for that, for any mayors that meet that 60-10 rule, or the other have 20 years of service as mayor, if y'all wish to meet it for those individuals, then that could be written into the plan, and we did clarify that that would not create a tax liability for the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions now? Director Adcock?
Said that, so when do we discuss that? At the same time we discuss the vacation and sick leave and everything?
I would recommend that.
And that's before the end of the year?
Yes, ma'am, and I would suggest that it be done before the 18th because that's right now the last scheduled meeting you have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, do we have a motion to...
One more. We have one more, Dean.
Sorry. Director Campuros?
if we're going to discuss that other issue, the time to do it is right now. I mean, we're going to walk out of here and we're not going to be able to discuss it. And we're going to come back on the 18th and we're going to have no idea of what we're talking about or how, what our thoughts are, what the implications are. So,
Director Hines?
Bruce and Tom and Stacy, so based on the ordinance that was voted on by the citizens of Little Rock that says the benefits and salary have to be comparable to the city manager, what is the stance if Bruce were to?
Can I just make one correction to that? If I remember correctly, it says the highest paid municipal employee.
Okay.
And that's not me.
That's not you. Okay. Well, then I guess what we need
We
is
should
some more.
address that.
Yeah, we need some. We need some information. It sounds like in order to be able to have that discussion on what all of the vacation pay benefits are for that official and for our own city manager, based on the city of Little Rock things. It sounds like. I don't know that we can have a rational discussion if we don't know what the parameters are.
Director Adcock?
I agree with Director Hines. I think we need a lot more information before this can be discussed. And I would like to have it timely information, not the day of.
Anything else, Director Adcock?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Director Richardson?
Yes, when that comparable component came in 2007, I believe in 2008 I requested an opinion because it's still at 160. That's what it moved up to in 2007. I think I requested an opinion with respect to does the automatic increase in Bruce's salary, and not necessarily the highest paid city employee, municipal employee, but in Bruce's salary, does it equate an automatic bump up in the mayor's salary? And I think the opinion said no, it doesn't. It has to be done by ordinance, some ordinance sponsored by one of us up here and voted on by one of us up here. Is that correct?
Right. The board has historically used the city manager as the highest paid municipal employee as opposed to the director of the airport. And then the question became, does comparable mean an automatic raise? And the answer to that in the opinion was no. And then it was raised again by Director Kazort, and it was noted that it had gotten to the point that there was a double-digit differential between that of the mayor and of the city manager. And before anything could be done, the mayor asked to take down the question of a salary increase.
So I remember requesting that opinion. I think it was around June of 2008, and I think when Brad brought it back up again, I think that was part and partial the reason or the point in time when our conversation went up around that same time. Is that correct?
I slept too much.
Well, okay, I got you. So then the other a process question, and I heard Dean suggest that we talk about it now. The fact that someone may reference that people are gone now, would it be appropriate for us to talk about this without acknowledging people who are here tonight who want to speak on this issue? Because we left it on second reading.
As I mentioned before, the concept of limiting the discussion to Mr. Carrero because of the technical nature of that, him being brought here, suggested that it wouldn't be open for other discussion. The questions that the board's going to have to decide will impact the final language of the ordinance, but it doesn't have to be done now.
It looks like Bruce want to chime in on that, Vice Mayor.
Bruce.
To me, and correct me, Tom or Jody, if I'm wrong, I think there are 3 policy areas for the board. Because we already know by state law we've got to do something, and we know what that amount is. So really the policy issues are the COLA, which what I've done is tied into the plan for all other employees. The spousal benefit, and what Tom is basically saying there is the board by law could decide that that's going to be the city's liability. But what's before you suggests that it's the mayor's liability, the current mayor, and in the future. And then the plan implementation. Again, the board could say we want to set up a different plan. But after talking to Jody and our internal staff, we feel like putting the mayor and future mayors into our plan is, I think, the most prudent approach.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. Director Wright?
Yes. What is our policy on leave payout for all employees? If they leave or retire, what do they get?
And we can provide that information. It depends on what level you are in the organization, but we can provide the different categories.
So
it has more to do with accrual, how much accrual that you're eligible to
so do we
carry
pay
over.
out the sick leave, or do we just pay out the annual leave?
Let me ask Stacy, because there's a approach we have implemented when we went to this PTO, STD, and so Stacy, if you would go over that.
Certainly, Vice Mayor Webb, Director Wright. Just focusing on the non-uniform employees, and that's everyone but your sworn police and fire, because again, they have different pension plans and so forth. For the non-uniform employees, the non-union segment of that, we went to a PTO, pay time off, STD, short-term disability plan. And under that plan, for instance, department directors, the non-union, non-uniform employees, for PTO, you are paid your total amount that you have accrued at the time that you terminate. For short-term disability, you get 2% per year of service up to a balance of 1,250 hours. So, for instance, if I was here 25 years times 2%, I would get half of my short-term disability balance up to a maximum of the accrual, which is 1,250 hours. So I would get half of that when I left employment. For PTO, we have maximum carryovers that are put into place at 12/31 of each year. For department directors, that's I can carry over to January 1st up to 400 hours of my PTO. And then starting January 1, I continue accruing throughout the year. If I was to leave employment during that year, I would take whatever was in my my accrued balance of unused PTO hours at my current hourly rate.
That's what I'm accustomed to hearing. So why can't we just implement that for the mayor? We have not tracked his leave like that?
There are documents in the city manager's personnel file where the board set his leave payout at 500 hours. With just that that directive, it doesn't answer all of the particulars of a policy, because that information didn't go far enough to say he can only accrue up to 500 hours and he's not allowed to accrue past 500 hours? Or is it 500 that he's allowed to carry over to the new year? For instance, like my 400-hour example. Was that to mean that he could only carry over to the new year 500 hours? For those employees that have excess of their maximum carryover balance, for my example is 400 hours, under the policy, anything in excess of those 400 hours past 12/31 would be pulled over and deposited into my short-term disability account. So I don't lose any time until I've reached the maximum short-term disability maximum account balance of 1,250 hours. So the parameters that we have for the city manager, there's additional information that's needed to really clarify what the board's intention was. Was it, again, just to stop at 500 hours, or was it to only allow him to carry over every calendar year, 500 hours, and then he would start accruing again. So there were a lot of issues that were not addressed in the city manager setup of his leave plans.
Well, as I said, I'm accustomed to it. You only, if you can only carry over a certain number of hours at the end of the year.
Correct.
Otherwise, you will lose the remaining hours. I think that's the fair way to do it. And if that's the way we have it, I don't know how else we would decide that at this late date. We got to go with what we have in place.
Well, again, what you have currently in place that was provided to the Human
500.
Resources Department does not address what the 500 maximum amount is. Is that during the year he can only accrue up to 500, or is he only allowed to carry over 500 at the end of the year?
I would think it would be carryover. Okay. So if we don't discuss this now and make a decision now, how are we going to have time to do that before the 18th? It's going to be a long.
I mean, some people have requested additional information, which
hopefully we'll
it would be helpful. I mean, I just looked at the information we got on the first ordinance and the board communication part of it just a little while ago. So if, as Director Adcock, I believe, requested, if we could get information on all of this vacation issue as quickly as possible, it would be helpful. I don't know if there's a consensus to address it now or to wait till we have a lot more information. But we do have 3 additional people who have their lights on. So, Director Hines?
I'm about to make a motion to go into executive session if we're done with this issue. To discuss the annual evaluation of city manager, city attorney, and to make appointments and reappointments to various City of Little Rock boards and commissions and for other purposes.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. We will recess to go into executive session.
Why would we not do agenda first?
Because we're still in a convened meeting. We're still in session.
We're in session.
Okay, we are now back from executive session, and we are reconvened. Let me first take the appointments to boards and commissions. On the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Citizen Grievance Committee, I'd like to appoint Ron Barra. Is there a motion to confirm? So moved. Is there a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We have one other position for a service provider with technology about the disabled, so anyone that knows of someone who might be interested, please pass the word. The next appointment has to do with the Animal Services Advisory Board. We have 2 positions. We have one individual asking for reappointment, Betsy Robb. I'd like to ask for a motion to confirm. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. She'll fill the Ward 2 position again, and we'll advertise the Ward 3 position. The next commission is the City Beautiful Commission. And we have one person who's applied for an at-large position, Robert Walker. Is there a motion to confirm? So moved. Second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. He is confirmed. And then we have a current member, Billy Sanders, who we need to move from a professional urban planner position to an at-large position. Is there a motion? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. That will also be completed. That will leave us now with 2 at-large positions to re-advertise and 1 professional position to be re-advertised. The next commission is our Community Housing Advisory Board. And we have 4 positions available. 2 people have applied. I'd like to appoint Rabib Abukir to the landlord property position and Dwight Stroud to the Community Development Corporation representative position. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We have 2 positions to re-advertise, the for-profit corporation representative and the lending institution representative. The next commission is the Little Rock Municipal Airport Commission. I would like to reappoint Stacy Hurst to that position. Is there a confirmation of that? So moved. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. On the Little Rock Planning Commission, I would like to reappoint Craig Berry and Scott Hamilton to those 2 positions. Is there a motion to confirm? Is there a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. I would then like to appoint Robbie Vogel, Tom Brock, and Robin Rahman to the additional other 3 positions. So moved. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. They are approved. And finally, on the River Market District Design Review Committee, I'd like to appoint Lance Ivy to the property owner position. Is there a motion to confirm? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. He is confirmed, and we will re-advertise the design professional position. Okay, that concludes that part of our session. Just a second. We then proceeded to an evaluation of our city manager and our city attorney. Let me just say first, as to the city manager, Mr. Moore gave us a very expansive recitation of all the great things that have been going on in our city through the 15 different departments and the magnitude of it. Certainly a lot of great work that the departments did, along with, of course, his leadership and direction as well. And we were very complimentary of his performance this past year. So, Bruce, thank you very much. We appreciate that very much. Director Compuris.
I'd like to make a motion that as part of our evaluation, we make Mr. Moore's benefit package on par with the package of the city attorney. Number one, it provides accrual of all PTO to be paid at severance or incrementally along with short-term disability payment. 6 months severance if dismissed for any reason other than just cause. Upon retirement, 6 months health care. Upon retirement, to be allowed to stay in paid status until PTO and STD is used up.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Very good. Let me move now on to the city attorney. Tom visited with us, and we all had a variety of specifics that we all have had Tom working on in one fashion or another, and we do appreciate all the hard work that he has done. Certainly, we're very pleased that through the course of this past year, based on his previous review, that he put in the tracking system for litigation and legal issues, and has had that computerized so that we can better keep up with the workflow that goes through the city attorney's office. And I can tell you, for one, it's a tremendous amount of workflow. We appreciate that. He's also recently had 2 positions open, and we have urged him to get those positions filled just as quickly as possible. So with that said, is there a motion? Is there a motion based on the issue of salary for Mr. Carpenter? Well, I haven't heard what it is yet. All right, there's a motion and a second that Mr. Carpenter receive, I believe it was 1.5%. Is that right, Mr. Moore? Yeah. Retroactive to January of 2018. And there's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That's approved. And then finally, as it relates to the upcoming budget, assuming it passes, there will be a recommendation that comes forward that the bonus that was provided for based on the salary issues would be provided to both Mr. Moore and to Mr. Carpenter. Is there a motion to that effect? There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That's approved as well. Okay. Is there anything else to come before the reconvened meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn that? All right, there's a motion to adjourn. A second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That's an adjournment. Now, everybody's got their coats on, getting warmed up, so we will now move on to the agenda for the Board of Directors meeting for December 18th. And let me ask you to look that over. We've got three resolutions to add, three resolutions and one ordinance to add to the agenda. And if there's no objection, I'll ask that those resolutions be placed on the consent agenda. Is that good for everybody? No objections? All right, they'll be added. The ordinance, let's move on to the planning and development items. And I believe we can group M4 with the planning and development items as well. And then let me go ahead and ask you if you have any questions on any of the grouped items now at this point in time. Yes, Director Adcock, if you'll turn on your microphone, please.
On item number 2, I just want to make sure that we notify this neighborhood association is Ellendale. They've had 2 meetings since this was in the Planning Commission. They are in opposition to it, and I want to make sure that they receive a notice. And the president is Terry Lewis. Then on item number 5, Mr. Moore, does this mean that we're going to give 2 police officers to Joe T. Robinson, one for the middle school and one for the high school?
Is one in the middle school too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And they're going to pay half the cost.
Okay, I still want to remind you, we're still waiting on COPP officers. This is 2 school resource officers now since we've had more COPP. Then I have item number 8 and 9. I'd like for Ms. Dana to come up and to say where these programs are and how they can get registered, what ages they will serve, and their locations.
Let me call on Dana Doucette, our community programs manager.
My 4 usual questions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, the Board of Directors, and to Bruce and Tom. So there are 3 programs that are being approved, that are up with the resolutions for today. So we have Boys and Girls Club Mitchell, which is in our the Boys and Girls Club Mitchell location, which is in Central. We have Boys and Girls Club Whetstone, which is a YIP program, which is in Southwest. And we have Bridge to Success, which is also a YIP program, which is in the West Central area. And so their location in the West Central area has not been solidified. My understanding is that they have looked at a place off of Colonel Glenn, but what they're waiting on is to be actually approved. They don't want to actually get into a rental situation unless they're actually approved for this program, because this will be an actual new location for them. In the past, they were actually in the Midtown area.
And where can people call to find out about these programs?
The best way to find out where our programs are to look on the website, littlerock.gov, and go to community programs. And if you look under funded programs and partners, there actually is a list of all of our different programs. So not just for these three, but for all of the different programs that we have. And we're keeping that updated. So, for example, next year, around March, we'll also have our summer programs that would be approved at that time on that list. So that's the best way to stay updated. But if they do want to give us a call, it's at 501-399-3420.
Thank you.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Dana, what is the age for this Bridge to Success?
As a YIP program, it's 13 to 19.
13 to 19. And the YIP will do what now?
Now, the YIP program is our youth intervention program. And so the youth intervention programs work with, there's a list of the types of students, but it's those who are at risk of being a gang or recruited by a gang or are currently in a gang, or they have could benefit from more attention and more one-on-one attention. So our YIP program serves 20 students, so there's a lower ratio of students to coordinators. Our normal positive prevention programs have 30 students. These have 20.
So this will be like high school?
Right, 13 to 19, right.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, because I work with the principal out at J.A. Fair, because a lot of some of his students live in Barra, in the
Right.
Barra area. And so I wanted to make sure he was aware that this program would be available, because he said that was one of they have pretty much after school. They don't have summer and they don't have intervention stuff.
And we actually will have two in the West Central area now. So there is one that was approved last week, actually,
And where is
in
that
West
one?
Central. Same thing. They wanted to wait until they had the actual location, the actual approval to start a program before they actually solidified the location.
Okay. Keep me apprised of that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. We can now look at the planning and development items 10 through 13. Director Wright?
Mr. Moore, I'd like a presentation on ordinance number 10. Can we see a picture, a sketch, or something? And is this an existing business already there? Or is this something that's going to be built?
Let me ask our planning director, Mr. Collins, to come forward.
Mayor, members of the board, Director Wright, that property is something that was approved a couple months ago for a planned development commercial by the board, and that has not been developed yet right now. The development, Scott, I don't know if it shows up on the zoning map, a little bit different. Yeah, if you look at where the PDC line is, you'll see that you have the annexation portion that's over there on the left that's hatched. That is outside the city limits. The other portion you'll see is half inside the city. So part of the requirements of that plan development, they would seek annexation upon approval to get the other portion in, so it would not be split. And so that's what you're seeing being presented before the board.
Were there any objections?
No, there was no objections.
Thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Yeah, mine was about item 10 as well, and I was trying to figure out, it looks like there's already a PDC up above that, and it looked like to me that we were splitting that property, but you're saying it belongs to the property that's going down toward Lawson Road as opposed to where the existing PDC building is at the top.
That's correct. It goes down to Lawson. That was approved. The planned commercial development to allow an office warehouse development for a pest control company. That was what come before the board for approval.
Well, that was my other question. It said extermination, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what kind of extermination are we doing there? Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on items 10 through 13? All right, anything through the end of the agenda? Anyone have any other questions? All right. Hearing none, that concludes the review of our agenda. Yes, Mr. Moore.
Two things. We'll do the financial report next Tuesday. And then at each of your seats, there was a memo from me regarding the January calendar. It kind of worked real perfect with the first being on a Tuesday, but we have 5 Tuesdays in the month, so we'll do it a little different with board meetings on the second and fourth Tuesday and agenda meetings on the other Tuesday. So anyway, just want to be sure to point that out.
All right, Director Compuris.
Just to remind the board, if you would like to give Bruce some money for the staff, next week's your last opportunity.
And just for those who may be watching, I want to thank the city for being willing to have a little bit of a reception for me on Thursday. I wanted the public to know they're invited, obviously, to that. Vice Mayor Webb is going to be handling the microphone. So anyway, I just want to make sure people were aware of that. Thank you very much. All right, if there's nothing else to come before us, then we are finished.